We're talking about Donald Trump's taxes with two Pulitzer Prize-winning journalists, David Barstow of the New York Times, who led the investigation into Donald Trump's tax records, and David K. Johnston. Now, David Barstow, in July, you wrote a piece for the New York Times headlined, "Donald Trump's Deals Rely on Being Creative with the Truth." You all wrote about how Trump was the beneficiary of miraculously well-timed memory lapses. You write, quote, "Such was the case when Mr. Trump filed a libel lawsuit against Timothy L. O'Brien, the author of Trump Nation, The Art of Being the Donald. Among other things, Mr. Trump asserted that Trump Nation cost him a deal made in heaven with a group of Italian investors many had met and who were on the brink of signing a business partnership that would have made him hundreds of millions of dollars. Their names he could not recall. Trump Nation also cost him a hotel deal with Russian investors, he said. He couldn't remember their names either. He was certain the book also ruined a deal with Turkish investors. Again, he couldn't recall any names. Polish investors also got cold feet after they read Mr. O'Brien's book. Their names escaped him, too. The book also scared off investors from Ukraine. Alas, he could not think of their names either. Mr. Trump's lawsuit was dismissed." David Barstow.
That's a pretty good paragraph. I like that.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten I'd written that. Yeah, it's an amazing thing to study him as a businessman and to study him, especially when he's being pressed on things about his business career. I mean, and every time, he's been deposed so many times. He's testified so many times, and he's been, tangled with some really good lawyers over the years, and you can see the lawyers. You can see their exasperation rising because every time they get close to kind of cornering him in an untruth, he has one of these moments where I can't
and there's
remember.
there's a legal reason for that, and that is when Donald says something under oath, he can get into serious trouble. So he'll say publicly outrageous things, but when you put him under oath, he can't remember. And revealingly, I think, about Donald in the case against Timothy L. O'Brien, he was asked about his...
And explain who Timothy L. O'Brien is.
Timothy L. O'Brien is a former colleague of ours at the New York Times when I worked there, and Tim worked there, and wrote this book, Trump Nation, that said Trump is not a billionaire. He's probably worth less than $200 million. And Donald said that was worth $5 billion of damages to him. Under oath, he was asked, well, how do you determine your net worth? Most of us, add up our assets, subtract what we owe the bankers, and the difference is our net worth. Donald's answer, well, it depends on my mood. It depends on how I'm feeling. And the lawyer pursued this. He didn't just, to make sure that there was a clear record. Then Donald kept saying, yes, it depends on how I feel that day. So I want you to know, this is a great day, Amy. I'm worth $2 billion.
Well, you do a lot of quoting in that piece, in the July piece, David Barstow, "Donald Trump's deals rely on being creative with the truth." You write, there was the time Donald J. Trump told Larry King that he'd been paid more than $1 million to give a speech about his business acumen when, in fact, he was paid $400,000, or the time he sought a bank loan claiming a net worth of $3.5 billion in 2004, 4 times as much as what the bank found when it checked his math, or the time he boasted that membership to Trump National Golf Club in Westchester County, New York, cost $300,000 when the actual initiation fee was $200,000, or the time he bragged on CNBC about his new Trump International Hotel and Tower in Las Vegas, claiming we have 1,282 units and they sold out in less than a week. As Mr. Trump knew, more than 300 units had not been sold. Confronted in a court case about this last untruth, Mr. Trump was anything but chagrined. He said, "I'm talking to a television station. We do want to put the best spin on the property." Yes, I'm reading from David Barstow's July article in the New York Times, "Donald Trump's deals rely on being creative with the truth." That's very interesting. Well, I'm talking on television. I don't have to tell the truth, which is what he's doing now in this presidential campaign. He's speaking on television.
The paragraph that lawyers and journalists go back to over and over again from his book, The Art of the Deal, is a paragraph where he talked about his admiration for the concept of truthful hyperbole.
Explain.
And it's this idea that the way he sees it, there's nothing wrong with. First of all, truthful hyperbole makes no sense at all, right? And he just sees it as entirely legitimate to exaggerate, to say things that aren't true, to play to people's desires, their fantasies. And I think you see...
he's a master salesman. It's a mixture of... Donald is a master salesman. You got to give him credit for some things in this world. And one of them is he knows how to sell and sell you something that may be worthless, but persuade you it's gold. And secondly, that's what con artists do. The thing about Donald, I once fed him false information, and his answers embraced my falsehoods that demonstrate he didn't know what he was talking about, but he put them into his answers. And he's done things like this in interviews with other people. So there's a mix here of, the con and the sales job. And if it benefits Donald, what are you worried about these fine, detailed facts for, unless he's under oath?
When you know what the facts are, and you know that he knows what the facts are, and then you watch him kind of mush all that together and throw in a bunch of, nonsense. He's actually, it's a stunning talent. I mean, it's all politicians, right, are bending the truth and are hedging here and there. But there's something about him, I think it's one of his most remarkable abilities. It's this, there's this, and you see it actually even when he's under oath and when he's being deposed, this incredible ability to weave fact and fiction together and make it sound like, it's this seamless reality.
Which, David, that's why I say Donald creates his own reality. That's the most, if you want to understand Donald Trump, if he says it's true, he's thinking it's true at the moment, not because it is, but because it'll get what he wants out of you. Donald creates his own reality.
And I think it's one reason why, even though fact checkers point out over and over and over again, no, that's not true. No, that's not true. That's wrong. He did support the Iraq War. It doesn't matter in his kind of conception of the world, because he does create this reality, right?
Exactly right.
Fusion writes, who pays more in taxes than Trump? Undocumented immigrants, retired veterans, single people making $15,000 a year.
Somebody sent me an email last night saying that the Clinton campaign should make up signs and just pass them out to their at their rallies that says, "I pay more taxes than Donald Trump." And a lot of people probably could hold up those signs.
Do you feel that there is a threat to freedom of the press now more than you've seen in many, many years?
I think that Mr. Trump, especially given the positions he's staked out over the course of this campaign and his whole lifetime, would represent a really significant threat to the tradition of an independent free press in the United States. I think the way he reacted to this story is particularly chilling to me as a journalist. I just have never seen someone take the kind of position that he took.
Amy, we've had a well-financed 40-year campaign to discredit the press. There are these bumper stickers in America, don't trust the liberal press. No, trust the news organizations that just make it up. And I think Donald Trump represents a clear and present danger to the liberties of the people, to the idea of the First Amendment. By his own words, he's made it very clear, if he were president, he would do everything he could to suppress any speech that he doesn't agree with or he sees as damaging to what he's doing. And he would have not just his finger on the button, but he would have the full powers of federal law enforcement. I also think that would provoke a constitutional crisis. I certainly hope it would provoke a constitutional crisis. But this is a real serious problem that Trump is exploiting.
He would clearly do all he could to weaken our defenses against libel lawsuits. Right. He's brought 5 libel lawsuits himself. He sued the architecture critic for the Chicago Tribune for
because he didn't like his opinion.
He didn't like his opinion,
and opinions are totally protected.
So, I mean, those are the kinds of. Those are the kinds of judgments that make you really wonder, what does he understand about our tradition of a free press?
We have to leave it there. I want to thank you both for being with us. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist David Barstow, who led the New York Times team that published the explosive report on Donald Trump's tax returns, and David K. Johnston, author of The Making of Donald Trump. That does it for our broadcast. We'll be broadcasting tonight the vice presidential debate. Check democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman. Thanks for joining us.